It's our favourite time of the week to talk to our favourite person in the world, the one, the only, the wonderful Megyn Kelly. How are you, rock star?
So great to be here. How are you?
Very good. Now, let's get to the sheriff of this Nancy Guthrie case. He's had to come out in the past couple of days and say nothing to see here in terms of the family. Now, this gives us an opportunity to kind of go there. Some edges of the internet and some of the actions of the police themselves have raised some questions in and around the brother-in-law. I'll be very clear, I am not accusing him of anything, nor of course are you. But it is interesting that they've come out and said, family, nothing to see here.
Okay, let me actually read you what the sheriff has said. On Sunday, he spoke to the Daily Mail and said, nobody, this is a quote, nobody has been cleared as suspects. On Monday, he issued a press release saying the family, quote, has been cleared as possible suspects. Tuesday, he issued another press release. The Guthrie family has not been identified as suspects, which is very different from has been cleared. Okay. I also have not been identified as a suspect, but I'm in absolutely no legal jeopardy on that case because I live in Connecticut. That's not the same situation for those who are actually a couple doors down from the mother or 2 miles away in the case of the Savannah's sister and brother-in-law. And I'm not saying that those two did anything whatsoever to Nancy Guthrie. But what I'll tell you is that the sheriff all along has said no one's been ruled out. No one's been ruled out. No one's been ruled out. And while he's been saying that, he towed the sister-in-law's car and impounded it into evidence. He sent, and so did the FBI, law enforcement agents to the sister and the brother-in-law's house over and over and over, including in the middle of the night where they kept the lights out and took pictures at 10:30 a.m. And then again, they went one other time overnight. Why did they do all that? They didn't do all that at Nancy Guthrie's neighbor's home. And where Annie Guthrie and Tomas, her husband, live is not the crime scene. So why were they doing all of that investigative work inside of their home if they are not at least considering one or both of them as having had something to do with Nancy's disappearance? All this dovetails with what a reporter here, 20-year crime reporter, very well respected, Ashley Banfield, reported, which was on day 3 of the investigation, a senior law enforcement source who she said she trusts implicitly, has impeccable credentials, told her that Tomas, who is Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law or Savannah Guthrie's brother-in-law, may be the prime suspect. And when she got a storm raining down on her for reporting that, day after day after day, her source said, you're on the target. Don't worry. Now, I had similar reporting that I offered based on my own sources, Paul. So I don't think Ashley Banfield is a nut. That doesn't mean that this guy did it, and it doesn't mean he's their only possible suspect. But her person said may be the prime, and mine basically said, feel free to stay on him. Okay? So that's where we were coming into this week with the sheriff having said over and over, no one's cleared, no one's cleared, no one's cleared. But be nice to the family. Don't be so mean, social media. Some of these people are victims. Now, the sheriff has a couple motivations. Let's say he actually does think the brother-in-law is a suspect. He wants him to continue cooperating with him. He does not want him to lawyer up. He does not want to have the man see him as an adversary. That's all very smart investigative police work. That's not my line of work. My line of work is to figure out what's going on and to report it to my audience. If law enforcement ever contacted me and said, I'm going to give you a tip, but I need you to keep this confidential for the integrity of the investigation, I would honor that. But that's not what this sheriff is doing. He's saying, don't be so mean. Okay, sorry, we're the media, sir. This is a Wendy's, sir. We are mean. I don't. Whoever told you we weren't mean? Okay, that's what we get paid to do. We're not in the I want to be liked business. We're in the I want to report news business. So I don't know what the story is with the brother-in-law, or it isn't. But I know the sheriff, in a desperate plea to appease what I think is probably Savannah and her sister, came out on, first of all, he screwed up on Sunday. He said, no one's been ruled out. And then clearly had some pressure from the family. And on Monday said, the family's not suspects. They've been ruled out. And then the federal law enforcement didn't back that up. They were like, no comment, basically. And he came out the next day and said, well, they haven't been identified as suspects. So we don't know what the truth is at this point, but you don't, as the reporter covering this, or frankly, as the police, rule anybody out until you see handcuffs on somebody. And even then, you might have a few questions left.
And what about some of the media who just doesn't like when you get into the uncomfortable territory of where all of this leads? Chris Cuomo, who is, of course, a cable TV host in the US, formerly of CNN, he is all angry, kind of passive-aggressive about what you are doing, which is following every lead.
Oh, it would be completely inappropriate for me to spend no time on the brother-in-law. He was the last person to see Nancy Guthrie. I mean, you know, that we know of. Obviously, an abductor came into the house later that night. But he was the person who had Nancy at his house earlier in the evening and says he dropped her back off at her house at 9:48 p.m. the night she disappeared. Obviously, we have to look at the brother-in-law. I'm sorry. And by the way, Paul, if you, God forbid, had a family member go missing, or I, God forbid, had this happen to us, I think both of us would say, speculate all you want about me, about my family. As long as you continue paying attention to the case and keeping it in the headlines, I'm fine. That the whole game, when you have a missing person, is to keep it in the news. And if what keeps it in the news is speculation about a family member, so be it. That's how I'd feel. But this guy, of course, was going to get scrutiny because he was the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive that we know of, other than the abductor. And the sheriff is the one who told us that. The sheriff came out and said, it was this guy, Tomas, who drove her home on the night in question. Then people said, oh, the Tomas, whose house you're searching overnight with the lights out? The Tomas, whose car you appear to have seized, or at least that of his wife? That guy? And the next thing we knew, the sheriff came out and said, well, family dropped her off. He'd already said that it was Tomas. And then when he was asked, why'd you switch it from Tomas to family? He said, oh, because people were just breathing too much heat down that guy's neck, so just to be nice. Like, well, what did you accomplish when you told us that? If you tell us, it kind of So this guy is a hot mess on his messaging, Paul. And of course, that only makes the media's hackles raise up more. And if Fredo Cuomo has a different reaction because he's a Fredo, he's more in the business of protecting the family. You know what I'm saying? He's not a truth searcher. That's his problem, not mine. But as I said on my show, the real problem with Fredo Cuomo is not that he has any objection to the way we cover crime or anything else on our show. It's that we happen to be one of, if not the top show in conservative podcasting, and Fredo no Rado. Fredo is bitter because he can't get anybody to watch any loser program he associates himself with. And that creates a certain sense of envy that is really corrosive to one's soul.
Yeah, bloody oath. Well said. What about Hillary Clinton? She gave an interview to the BBC today, now claiming that Donald Trump is part of an Epstein files cover-up.
I just want it to be fair. I want everybody treated the same way. That's not true for my husband and me because other witnesses were asked to testify. They gave written statements under oath. We offered that. They want to pull us. Why do they want to pull us into this? To divert attention from President Trump. This is not complicated.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton, wife of Bill Clinton, who is in the Epstein files almost more than Jeffrey Epstein himself. The photos, the flight log. How dare she?
Like, honestly, there are few in the Epstein files as many times as Bill Clinton. Like, there's a long, long history between those two. And so long, in fact, that they were too scared to testify before Congress. You and I talked about this a week or two ago and tried to dodge the subpoenas that they'd been issued. And then they folded like cheap tents because they knew they didn't have a leg to stand on. So, they will be giving testimony on that at the end of the month. But Bill Clinton was, at least Donald Trump admits that he was friends with Epstein for 10 years before they had a massive falling out. Bill Clinton tries to admit tries to say he didn't even know the guy. Meanwhile, there he is in pictures with him in Epstein's hot tub with some young ladies and in other pictures frolicking about. God only knows what the history between those two is. We're going to find out more at the end of this month. But I mean, everything that comes out of Hillary Clinton's mouth is a lie. Like if her lips are moving, she's lying. And her daughter, Chelsea Clinton, she comes out, the ultimate Nepo baby. Why would we listen to her on anything? Anything? What has she done in order to earn our good opinion on anything she has to say? Did she accomplish anything? Did she work for 10 years in a certain industry, gives her extra? No, nothing. She ran her disgusting family foundation that appears to be corrupt to the eyelids. So she decides to come out and say, oh, these are only AI-generated issues of my dad. Close, but no cigar. In response to which the whole internet said, well, there was a cigar, actually. If we must get technical, there has been a cigar. I think we all know where he put it. And you might want to take a seat in trying to exonerate your dad out of disgusting, filthy sexual misconduct.
Now, I've got to ask you about the latest lefty outrage, which is circling the wagons around TV talk show host Stephen Colbert. Now, we know how lefty he is. We know that he is out to cause as much noise as he can between now and when he finally gets finished off on CBS in May. And the latest example of that is he claimed on his show that he was told by the lawyers for the network that he could not interview a Democratic politician, because there are weird provisions under the law that say during an election time, if you talk to one candidate, you have to talk to all of the candidates. So he didn't do it on TV. Instead, he did it on YouTube. That's now got 2.5 million viewers. And a lot of people saying censorship.
You know who is not one of my guests tonight? That's Texas State Representative James Tallarico. He was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers, who called us directly, that we could not have him on the broadcast. Then I was told in some uncertain terms that not only could I not have him on, I could not mention me not having him on. And because my network clearly doesn't want us to talk about this, let's talk about this.
So I think that the FCC was just not enforcing this rule, and now they are. And apparently what just came out this evening was, and I'm reading here, The Late Show was not prohibited by CBS from broadcasting that interview. They just told Stephen Colbert that if you do it, the FCC equal time rule for the two other candidates, Democrats, will kick in. So you're going to have on Jasmine Crockett in addition to this Democrat who's challenging her in the primary, if you do it. And apparently he didn't want to do that. I don't blame him. Who wants to talk to her? So he put it on YouTube and got more viewers there than he's gotten in the past 10 years on his late night show. So he's fine. I, for one, am thrilled to see the FCC rattling the cage a bit of these late night shows, whether it's Kimmel or Colbert, because the days of pretending that these are sheer comedy shows and not political shows are over. That's all they are. They ceased a long time ago going for laughs. All they want is applause to their political hit jobs. And so why don't we just accept what they are telling us they are and proceed accordingly?
Yeah, I mean, these guys are comedians, but they are obviously of the left. They are political players. They're happy to win journalistic awards like the Peabodys. So good luck to them. Oh, by the way, what about the Media Research Council today? They came out with research suggesting that the major late night shows have not a single Republican candidate on since 2016. Lovely to see you as always, Megyn. Look forward to hanging out with you next week.
The pleasure's always mine. Thanks, Paul.